who are new to embroidery, or some of you, even some of you who have questions about embroidery, that's been doing it for some time and stuff, about the process of how to actually digitize a design inside the software. And if you get to a point to where you can actually go in and create a design from scratch, for those of you who are new, it's a process. Some of you may pick it up quicker than others, which is normal. And but I just want to take you through and to show you the process, because lots of times I get lots of questions about just the process of how to create a design, because lots of times it's not even knowing what buttons to press to go in and to be able to create a design basically for the maximum effect for your machine, because there's things and stuff that you want to try to make sure of, and there's a goal that you want to try to reach basically. And the thing is, you want to be able to go in and create a design that has as less trims in it as possible, and you want to create something that's going to just run smooth on your machine from start to finish so that you can begin your next run. And so just stick with me for a minute here. We're going to go in. This is just a cap again, and we're going to just go in and show you how you can use the software to generate the stitches needed for just some great quality. One thing that you have with the Willcom embroidery software, and the one thing that separates the Willcom embroidery software, is the stitch processor. Okay, and lots of people, they may not think about that, but the stitch processor in any software is going to be the gem under the stone, if you will, because if your software can process stitches to create some just magnificent designs, you'll be able to do so in this particular software. And I'm going to show you exactly what to do, just my thought process, as far as when I go in and I look at a design, what I'm thinking about. And it's not that I want you to think what I'm thinking, because we're all different, but I just want you just to kind of give you an overview of what I'm thinking about when I go in to do a design. One, as I talk about so often, you probably get tired of me saying this, but one, when the customer sends you a job, basically, it's imperative that you know what the finish size of the embroidery is going to be. Okay, and the reason behind this is that you want to make sure that if this is going to go on a cap design, you want to be able to digitize it for a cap, and you want to be able to digitize it so that it actually fits inside the space here for a cap. On lots of cap frames, basically, they go 2 inches tall. Some can go a little bit higher than that for the cap frames. And for this, basically, so I'm going to take you through here. Now here we have a bug, and we also have the word bug as well. And when you're digitizing, I'm just going to kind of roll my mouse button forward here to kind of zoom in. Now, when you're digitizing a design, basically, you want to try to get the best type of artwork that you can get for the design. And that could be a JPEG design. It could be a vector type design. Vector is what you want to try to get, if at all possible, because it's going to give you the clearest imagery as far as being what to digitize from, actually, because if you can see what you're digitizing on the screen, it's going to be a lot easier for you and take you less time to get that particular job done. Okay, so here, and I'm going to again zoom into this bug. Now, when I look at this bug, what do you see here? And I want you to take a look at this, and just what do you see when you see the bug here, actually? And what I'm referencing to is the actual the objects that are on the screen, what the objects look like, and how they compare to the ones on the other side of the bug. Because one thing that I love in design is symmetry. And in embroidery, as well as if you're just doing a graphic design, if you have symmetry, that resorts to you having to use less time in order to go in and fix something or create something with that particular design. Now, this particular bug here, as I look at this. Now here, as I zoom in, I see this leg looks a lot like this leg. Okay, this leg looks a lot like this leg. And so when you begin to look at the design and begin to break it down, because what I want you to get to the point of, if you haven't gotten there yet, is I want you to be able to, when you look at the artwork, I want you to be able to hear that machine stitching in the background, and being able to see that embroidery machine stitching that design out. And it's something that when I first got started, I wasn't able to do it at first because I was just getting started. Okay, as I continued, and I was been blessed to be been trained by two of the best German designers in the world. First, how to draft, um, for specifically for the embroidery machine. So my mind thinks like the embroidery machine. Okay, and so I want you to, depending on where you want to be with the embroidery uh, in the future stuff, just kind of just think about things like that. So when you're working with the designs, actually, everything comes together. You're maximizing your efficiency. You maximize your productivity and the way that you create the designs. So now, as far as the stitching goes and the different types of stitching that I use inside the system, there are a couple of things that I use. You may use something different, but I love to use the input B here. I love to use this stitch type because it's easier to go in and do one side of the object and then do the adjacent side of the object, or the opposite side of the object. So as we go through here, I want you to think about the colors. I want you to think about how a bug looks in real life. If you're actually, I know some of you, I hope you're not afraid of bugs, but if you're standing over top of this bug right now, I want you to think about what you see. In particular, what's on the top, what's in the middle, and what's on the bottom of the bug as far as the objects are concerned. And if you think about that, as far as when you go in and you create designs, actually, you eventually get to the point to where you'll break them down because they have dimensions. If you're standing right now in front of your computer, um, and your computer was sitting in front of you, and there was a wall in the background, you have three different dimensions here. You have a foreground, you have a middle ground, and you have a background. I don't know if you remember an artist by the name of Bob Ross. I used to love him on PBS. He would come in and he would paint these masterpieces in 30 minutes on PBS when I was a kid, also showing my age. And I want you to think about that when you look at a design. Some of them may be a bit more difficult than others, but if you're looking at the design in real time and you're figuring out, well, this I'm in the foreground, the computer is in the middle, and the wall is in the background. And that's what I want you to think about this bug here as well. Okay. Again, I mentioned the colors. I want you to think about the colors, where they are with the design, and what's going to be first, what's going to stitch second, what's going to stitch last with this particular design. Okay. And I promise you, in time, if you haven't figured it out yet, you'll be a master at this. So we're going to go in and so the first thing's on the bug. If I'm looking at the bug, if I'm actually standing over the bug, what's going to be the first thing? What's going to be on the bottom of the bug? Because that's what I want to get rid of first. Okay, I want to be able to go in and take care of whatever is on is on the bottom of the bug first, because I'm going to build. I'm building it up actually from the bottom, from the ground to the top is how I'm going to build this up. Okay, so what do you see here, and what's on the bottom of the bug, and what do you think about what would you digitize first? Now that I've mentioned this to you, how would you do that? What would you do first, and why? Okay, okay, Debbie, yep, Suan and Rhonda, yep. Exactly. Excellent, because the legs the legs should go first. Now also what's on the bottom as well are the green antenna as well. So those are also on the bottom. Okay, so whatever in this particular design here, we're going to start here with the brown legs first, but anything that's on the bottom, needs to go first because again, you're creating layers. And in embroidery, when you create layers in embroidery, you can easily make things look three-dimensional. Okay, and so right now, so as I'm gonna go in here. I'm gonna choose my stitch type, and now again, once the finished size of the design is what we're looking for here. So if I were to go in and click my number 1 button on my keypad here, that number 1 button is going to take that design to 1-to-1 like that. And so this is going to be the finished size of my design. So as I'm looking at this, again, this is 1-to-1. And so I'm going to go in and I'm going to look at the legs here. Now, inside embroidery also, I want to reference as well that when you're going in and you're digitizing satin stitches, as we're going, I'm going to navigate down to the bottom here. I'm going to click on the Input B tool, okay, and I'm going to click on the brown color here as well. And now, looking at this as well, when I look at the legs, actually, because I'm going to be traveling underneath this bug first, I have to create then a pattern, okay? Because how am I going to get from this leg to this leg? How am I going to get from this leg to this leg? Because there's a space here that needs to be, or in other words, I need to have something laying down on the fabric that's not going to create a trim. Okay, if I digitize this first and then digitize this leg, there's going to be a trim underneath unless I do what? I'm going to have to go in and I'm going to have to create something in order for for this to work, in order to keep the needle on the fabric for as long as possible. Okay, and you're right, Sherry. We are going to do we are going to do the exactly. We're going to do what we call a running stitch or bridge. Okay, a bridge is going to get us from one place to the other, because the main thing is when you're digitizing something, you want to, if you're digitizing a color, you want to go in and try to finish that color at once if you can. If you could do all the brown first and just finish with the brown and not have to go back to the brown, it's great. Of course, we know that doesn't always happen, but if you can, you definitely want to do that. So we have our input B selected here, we have a color selected here, and I'm going to use my roller, my mouse, to kind of roll into this actually. So with the input B, that's going to allow me to go in, and I have a little space here. There's a line here, and you want to do what we call an overlap of the brown, because I'll show you what happens if I don't do the overlap, because here you have where the two colors meet. So if I start here, I'm just going to go in here real quick, digitize the leg here as it goes through, and I'll do one side first here, like this. When you're digitizing, I want you to think about this also, is that sometimes if you're digitizing something, if something doesn't look right to you, as long as it does not change the actual shape of the design itself or that object, go ahead and make that move. Like in particular, like if I did not like the way this looked here, I can press my backspace key like this, go in. If I wanted to do something like this and alter it, I can do this and alter that if I wanted to. Okay, and again, it's just your choice. Or if you see something that needs to be corrected with the artwork, go ahead and do it, because lots of times you'll find lots of artists, they may not have the necessary embroidery experience when they're creating the artwork, and so you'll find situations where you have to go in and actually adjust or change some things from their perspective. Now, once I get to the end of this, because I'm working with input B, I'll press enter. It's going to take me back to the forefront here. I'll start here, right click my mouse button here, so as I go down on the other side, like this. As I finish this, now I'm going to press enter, and that's going to fill that in. Now the reason why I did a tatami stitch is I navigate here, I'm going to select my select tool, is because the tummy stitch is selected here up top. All I've got to do is go to the left and click the satin stitch like this. Okay, now once I've done that, you can go in also at any time. You can edit, like sometimes you have stitches like this. Now, if you want to know what a long stitch is in embroidery, a long stitch is going to be anything from 7 millimeters beyond. It's going to be a long stitch. If I wanted to go in at this point here, and let me go ahead and select my measuring, I'm going to go to metric here because metric is all I know since 1996, and I'm going to press M as in Mary. M allows me to use a ruler on the screen such as this. I can measure the distance here of this stitch is 6.82. Now, this is totally up to you as far as how you want to do this. I'm going to go in and I'm going to change the outline. I'm going to select it. I'm going to press H as in Harry. That's going to give me my node points. And I can adjust this and change this. I can take this first point here, move it here. Watch what happens. It does that. I can click here, make that a line point. And so I've just adjusted here the leg so that when it stitches, it's going to stitch in this direction here and allow me to continue digitizing this. Again, this is just my opinion as far as what I want to do to this. If you wanted to leave it the way it was, that's perfectly fine. Okay, I'm going to zoom out of here. So I've got the first leg done here. Okay, now what I can do here, because in embroidery, because you have so many different choices to do different things with the stitches here, you're just going to try to create something that's going to work better for your production. I have a choice here now. I can do this side first with the brown, or I can travel across and do this one, run and do this one, and then come back across and do this one. Again, that's just my opinion on how I would like to do the bug actually. And I have a question here. And Sherry wants to know, can I do that again? With the leg here, Sherry, as far as adjusting and changing the item, the node points, is that what you're referring to? Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go backwards. And the beautiful thing about this software also is that you can undo something 256 times. Isn't that incredible? So I'm going to go up top. I'm going to go back up top here, and I'm going to choose undo. As I click that undo, it's going to go back and change it to where it was, like this. Okay. Again, once you select something, I have an option. I can, if I want to go to the reshape tool, I can click on the reshape tool here, or it tells me I can press the letter H, as in Harry. That's going to give me my node points here. Now, note, the one thing with the input B tool is that that's going to be based on your first point, your first 2 points, and your last points. Okay, so if you notice, once I digitized the first point here, and then I went to the top, you see how it actually navigated and emitted that long stitch, right? So right now, what I can do with this is, if I want to go in and adjust this, all I've got to do now is just, I'm going to move this up like this. And you see how it already changes the stitch direction. Okay, and on the bottom here, with my reshape tool, you can add node points. I'm going to press S as in Sam to hide the stitching. Okay, if I click on the node point here on the outline, you see what happens? I can add node points to the object here like this. Okay, the little boxes here are going to be angle points or straight points or line points. The little circles here, of course, they're curves. I can change that by pressing my my key on the bottom of my screen here. Excuse me. My space bar. Watch what happens. I can select it. Press my space bar. The space bar is going to toggle back from a line point to a curve point, just like this. Okay. You can do 1 point, or I can do, if I click here, press my shift key down and click this one and press my space bar, it'll do them all at the same time, like this. Isn't that cool? Okay, so we're going to delete this one. So now, again, I'm going to press S as in Sam to bring the stitches back. My pleasure, Sherry. And so here, so again, and watch what happens when I move it like this. Watch how it changes. You see how it changes that? So that's what happens when you're dealing with the input B stitch and you're controlling the starting and exit points here with that. Now, at this point now, I'm going to go in and I want to travel. I'm going to just do one side first and then go back and do the other side. I'm going to use my running stitch as I selected here, and I'm going to travel. I'm going to select it here. Select my running stitch. I'm going to travel underneath because I've got to make it to this next station here, and I've got to do it underneath the bug so that the stitches don't protrude out and show up on the garment. So here I'll just go here, this. I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to press enter. Okay, so I've made my little bridge from one section to the next, and now I'm going to press my space bar, which because I've already chosen the input B tool, so I've got my two actual choices here that I've chosen. And I got a question from Marie. Marie wants to know why don't cut the thread? Why don't I cut the thread? Because what happens is, for those of you who are unaware of this, do you know it takes 6 seconds to do a trim on an embroidery machine? It takes 6 seconds to do a trim. Okay, so if I'm running underneath the bug, it's more profitable for me to keep the needle on the fabric running on the machine versus having it do a trim. Because sometimes if you're running, let's say if you're running 3 garments only, and you've got trims in that design, let's say you have 5 trims. But if you're running 100 dozen of those, with those 5 unnecessary trims, it's going to cost you money later on. And it's going to kill your production, and you're going to pay because it takes, again, 6 seconds to do a trim on an embroidery machine. Okay, so with this now, going back, I'm going to press my space bar. It's going to take me back to my input B, and I'll start digitizing again. Now this time when I go in, my pleasure, Marie. This time I'll start here. So one thing about digitizing, you have all the choices in the world because we're all different, like I said, and you may give a design to several different digitizers and they may digitize it differently, but the results are what's going to matter. It's like you go to a baseball game. If you have a baseball game going in, you have different families coming in, going to the baseball game from different directions, from different parts of the city. They may have to take different directions on how to get to the game, but the most important thing is that they end up at the game on time. Okay, so here, as I go in, again, another situation here with the, stop there. Now, so I've completed side A of this object. I'm going to press enter, and using input B, that will now allow me to go in and create side B here, objects here for this design. As I go in, just like this. And whenever you make a mistake inside the program, like you go, oops, why did I do that? You can, while you're in the digitizing mode, you can press your backspace key like this. That backspace key will allow you to go, will backtrack for you, and then you can come back and you can complete that just like this. It's not a problem. And even if that doesn't work, you can still go back and just delete it. So here I'm going to press enter. Again, I need to select, finish that right there. Now, so I want you to look at this. I'm going to press H for the reshape tool. Okay. Now, right now, because I'm using input B, notice there are no stitch angles in this object. Okay. James, what is a stitch angle? Well, let me try a different object. Let me go in and let's do this. I'll move this to the outside like this. This was input B, and remember, once I pressed the reshape tool, there were no guide stitches, guides for the stitch direction. Well, let's try it again. I'm going to go in. I'm going to use. I'll use a different stitch type this time. This time I'll use the fusion fill. And I'll start here. Now watch what happens here with the fusion fill. just going to digitize this, and this is important, especially for those of you who are new, because this will carry you a long way. Now, for this one, I don't have to just do side A first and then side B. For the fusion fill, I can do the entire object like this, just like this. Press enter. Okay. Enter again. I'll tell it where I want to start stitching there, and it's important that I want to start stitching where this last stitch ended. Okay, so where this stitch ended, this is where I want my starting point to be on my next stitch. Okay, because that's going to continue the run on the machine, and the machine is not going to stop. Okay, I'm also going to enter my exit point here also. Now it's asking me for a stitch angle on my lower left corner of my screen. So I'm going to give it stitch angle. So this is what you didn't see on the last leg because they weren't available because I used the input B. Press enter. Now when I go back and I use my reshape tool, now I have stitch angles. And this is the importance of the stitch angle. Watch this. Watch this. Isn't that cool? And this is you controlling the embroidery machine. You're controlling the stitch angles on the embroidery machine because let's say that even just take a look at it, you can actually see, because the picture is worth 1,000 words. You can see the difference here between how these particular stitches here were generated based on the input B method here. Now with input B, I'm going to press H, okay, and I'll click the second one here with the stitch angles. Now notice, because you can control the stitches, that gives you an edge on your embroidery machine, because sometimes you may not want the stitches to turn at such a sharp angle. Note, see what happened here with this one? Watch what happens when I turn it, angle it like this. You see the difference? And you're controlling it. Okay, and it's imperative that you kind of understand why that needs to be done, actually, because I can make it in like this, if I wanted to. If it were larger, this would be more. This would make more sense if it was larger, because the stitches here would be a lot wider. Okay, and so you have an option. But if it's smaller, you can definitely turn the stitches like this. Now, what about this, James? What could I do with this input B? Well, you can actually you can definitely change it. With input B, if you want to add stitch angles to it, you can add stitch angles easily. All you're going to have to do, I'm going to press S to hide the stitches again. Right now, remember, with input B, it does not come with stitch angles, because the stitch angle is based on the first 2 stitches and the last 2 stitches. Now, what I can do with this, if I did want to go in here and I wanted to add stitch angles, you can do it this way, or with any other reshape object. I'm going to press and hold down my control key on my keyboard. Okay, so I'm holding down my control key. Now watch what happens when I move my cursor on top of the outline. Look at that. Look at that. It gives you a stitch angle. You're only going to be able to use this if you're on top of the line. If I left click, you see how it added the stitch angle there? Left click, left click, left click. I'm going to turn on the stitches. Now watch how this changes. See this area here? And how this, watch this. See what happens once I angle the stitches like this. Watch this. And this one. And this one. This is the control that you have with the software, and it's incredible, because just being able to do this will allow you to modify the stitches on a design, basically, where it gives you a heightened or a better look in the very end. So the product itself, basically, you're gonna have a better look with the product. If I go in and do another one here, if you want to delete them, you just click on the little node point here, left click it, and press delete, like this. Left click, press delete, just like that. So you can get rid of them also. Again, these are the guide points here that are used inside embroidery that allow you to control the stitch angle. Okay, and yes, it does give you a lot cleaner look with the object as well on the screen. Okay. I'm going to delete that one. We'll use this one because this is already there. Now, sometimes also with this, I also mentioned about the overlap here. I'm going to press S to hide the stitches. The overlap here is necessary because what you don't want to happen is on those $80 polo shirts is that when you go in, if you don't overlap here underneath it, what you don't want to happen is this. Once it's sewn out, once it's stitched out, you do not want to see this gap on that $80 golf shirt. Okay, and I don't know if that's ever happened to you before. It has to me. And sometimes you're working with it and stuff, and you're not paying attention to what's happening as far as that gap. But depending on the fabric and other things with the design as well, that you don't want to see a gap here on the fabric. I'm going to undo this. So that's the purpose for the overlap. Now I'm going to continue here with my running stitch here. Let's click that again here. Here we go. Again, as I go through, I'm going to stop here. Now, some people also, they do this, guys. Now, right now, because I stopped at the beginning of the last two, but you may decide that you want to use that running stitch to go all the way down like this, because the machine is going to do it anyway. Okay, the software is going to do it anyway. Okay, it has to run down to finish up top here. So I'm going to press my space bar back here to my input B stitch here, and I'm going to start. So here I'll start on the inside like this, just like this. And there, stop there, press enter. I can go back now and do side B, just like this. Just like that. And a lot of it basically, once you get the basics down, okay, just like that. Now with this one, now you see here, now some people may not notice that, okay, and it's going to stitch regardless. If I press the number 1 key, that's what it's going to look like at 1-to-1. So you're not going to be able to see it there. Okay, well, once it's stitched out actually on that particular garment, you won't be able to see it. But if you go up close to it, you will see that there's a longer stitch there. And that longer stitch itself, basically, it's not bad, but I'm going to press H, and I'm going to go in, even if I just do one angle like this, just one. Okay, in a situation like this, it's not going to allow me. Or I can do this. What if I delete it? What if I go here and do it? Press my control key down and put it there. See what happens? See how it changes it? It makes it look cleaner, just like that. So that's basically what you're doing with the software. And if I want to go in and add, if I want to turn the stitches more, if I want to turn it for some more depth perception here, or turning, I can do it just like that. Okay. All right. And once I finish that, I'm going to press my space bar, or I'm going to go down. I'm going to use my running stitch here, and I'm going to go back down. Could I have started at the top? Absolutely. But because here, I started here at the bottom, I'm going to start there as well, just like that. Okay. And if I want to go in and make that straight, you can make that straight also. Okay. So now, once I've done that, once I put that in, I'm ready now to go in and add the other 3 legs here on the screen. Now, I can do that one of 2 ways. I can either digitize it, or I can go in and use, I can select everything on this side and duplicate it, okay, like this. Now, in your color object list, what you can do is this actually. If I go in, I'm able to go into the color object list and look and see my color brown here that I just created, okay? And so now, so with this, where'd they come from? This color brown, if I select it in the color object list, it also selects it on the screen as well, like this, okay? All I need is, I need this first leg here, 1. I want to select all the objects except for the last one. I'm going to press my shift key down, and I'm going to click on this one. You see how it selects everything in between? Again, I'll do it again. If I want to select a certain selection of objects on the screen. I'll select this one, press my shift key down, and go down and select this one. It'll select each one in between that one. Now, what I want to do here, I want to go in, I'm going to right click this and do a quick clone. I want to drag that over just like this right here. And I'm going to release it. Okay. Again, that's what we call a quick clone. A quick clone allows you to go in and right click on an item, a selected item, and just drag it. Now, with this one, I'm going to do this one more time because I want to get everything at once and I want to group it together. Here, right click, release. For the quick clone, I'm going to navigate up top. I want to group that real quick just so that I can have them all together. Now, I'm going to flip this on my screen. You can flip this by actually going in, and right now I just want to do a horizontal flip here. So I'm going to select horizontal, and see how it flipped it there? I can go back to one side like this, flipping it just like that. Okay, it's once I flip it again, I'm going to select it. Notice when I select it, the node points here, I'm going to click this one. You see how they're solid here now, the node points? If I click it twice, it makes them hollow. Okay, and what that means for us is that I can actually grab that corner, left click on it, and just rotate it like this. Okay, again, these are things that you have at your power inside your software. You can go in, if it's not suited for it, just go ahead and go in and rotate it some more like this, just like that, and just slide those over like this, just like that. Okay, and that's what you can do inside your software. Okay, because you have, as you go in, and now not only have I duplicated it, basically, I don't have to digitize it again. So the more that you do this, the faster that you're going to get with this, I promise you. And so now you have these objects here on the left side. They're already done, okay, and you just knock that out of the park here with that particular color, okay. Any questions? Okay, I am having some difficulty seeing my screen here actually. Hold on for 1 minute, please, guys. I do apologize. Okay, for some reason, my little box here kind of disappeared here from the screen with the, let me see here. Hold on for a minute, guys. I do apologize. For some reason, my little screen apparently disappeared off the... There we go. All right. Okay. And my question here, I have, let's see. Yes, Maria, the mirror would do it all at once, actually. And the it's a little bit different, actually, because I got it in an angle here, actually. And usually with the mirror is something that we normally use because it's at an angle, actually. And sometimes when you go in and you you do have to go ahead and turn it. So I wanted to make it a little bit more complicated than what it really was actually. And I have a question also from Oski. I think is it Ausk? I have a question from is it Ausk? Okay. And Ausk has a question about the pool compensation. Now, when we talk about and get into the pool compensation, um, the pool compensation is always going to make a difference in um, the outcome of the embroidery based on how the stitching is generated, basically, and how it adjusts the stitching. Um, and Debbie also has a question. Debbie wants to know where can we get an images of the caps. Debbie, I would be thrilled to be able. I will send you guys all of my little templates here of the cap designs. I'll be glad to send them to you after class. Okay. And Sherry also has a question about the fill adjustment. Now, first, let's talk about the pool compensation. Now, on my screen, basically, when you talk about pool compensation, I'm going to navigate up top here. And under the design drop menu, you guys are asking some really great questions. There is an auto fabric setting inside the program, and this is designed for the new user, as well as it is designed for us old schoolers also, that helps us with the pool compensation, the densities and things like that with the design. Actually, one class I'm going to actually do pool compensation and densities, because that's actually in a class all by itself, as a matter of fact. And so with the auto fabric assistant here, if I select it on my screen, I've got mine set up for James Custom. And the reason why I'm taking you here is because some of the settings that are used inside the program, because I'm used to using my own settings from so many years ago, I still like to use those settings. And so I've got mine set up here as James Custom, so that's what I'm using inside the program. You do have the option to use here generic fabrics, hand knit fabrics, and these are automatic settings here that you can use that will help you so that you don't have to guess as far as, well, what type of underlay should I use for leather? Here's the leather and suede right here. So it's those settings are already built into the program for you to make it easier for you, so that you're not having to think, well, so what underlays do I have to use for linen or lycra or mesh? So those, they're already in there. So I just wanted to show you that first. Okay, now I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to select the leg. I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to go into the object properties of this. Now, the object properties of that is going to show me here the type of stitch that I was using here also. And as far as the pool compensation, that is going to be in the pool comp setting here. And once I select it on my screen, based on my settings here, the pool compensation here, I normally use 0.17 for my pool compensation. And what that does, basically, the pool compensation, it compensates for the pull on the actual fabric itself, if that makes sense. And let me give you a let me show you here real quick. I'm trying to figure out the best way to do this. I'm going to do I'll do two columns. Okay, I'm going to do a column here and give it a width here, and I'm also going to duplicate this column here also. Okay, the pool compensation and what it does inside the software, I'm going to press T this time. The T is going to just show us the actual the pure stitch on underneath it. Actually, it doesn't show the 3D view. Watch what happens to this when I go in and I change the pool compensation on this. I'm going to take it up just like this. I'm going to undo it. Okay. Now, so what that does basically, again, once I go in, I'm going to increase that. Again, if you're stitching something on leather, because leather is what we call an unstable fabric, I'm sorry, I think it's a stable fabric. I get my words mixed up here. Leather is a stable fabric. Leather is like a hardwood floor. Okay. The other type of fabric that we use is an unstable fabric. That's going to be terry cloth, something really soft. Okay. And so what the pull compensation is designed for basically is to compensate for the pull. So in other words, if I want my stitch on my garment, once it's finished stitching on the garment, to be this size here, okay, um, the pull compensation is going to go in, it's going to adjust it, it's going to change that. So on the fabric itself, I may have to change the pull compensation to get to this width on the actual finished sewn fabric. I may have to take this pull compensation up a little bit to stitch on terry cloth. It's going to make it wider, okay, so that when it stitches out on the garment, it's going to end up being this size here, if that makes sense. And it may sound weird, but again, some things you have to do in the beginning in order to make it stitch correctly in the end, actually. So this is one of those things with the pull compensation that allows it to do that on like terry cloth material. Okay, and pull comp is very important, but if you're just doing basic embroidery on like this type of cap here, tool cap actually, I'll just go in and I'll use the 1.7 is what I usually use for that, for the pull compensation. Now this object here, this tool is called column width. Now the column width is very different than the pull compensation, okay, because with the pull compensation, let me select these two here. I'm going to go in real quick. I'm going to add underlay, and let's say I'm going to do a zigzag underlay stitch for both of those. You see the two zigzag stitches here. Pull compensation compensates for the pull on the fabric. Okay. What we have here is the column width. That's going to actually go in and do something like this. If I need to make the column width wider, watch this. See what it does here? The column width is going to extend it out and make it wider. It's going to make the column itself wider, okay? But what it's also going to do, and I'm going to do this again here for you. Did you see what happened just now? Watch this. I'm going to undo this twice. For this one, with the column width, watch what happens to the underlay stitch once I stretch it out. You see how the underlay stitch went with it? Okay, that's for if you want to increase a column while you're digitizing on something, just to make that column wider. It's going to take the underlay stitch with it. But for the pull compensation, because it only compensates for pull on the fabric itself, it's only going to extend the top stitching out. The underlay stitch does what? It does not move. Why? Because if I'm going to stitch this on terry cloth, in the end, it's going to end up being the same width. It's just compensating for that thick fabric, basically, is what that is, if that makes sense. So we're going to have to do a class on this just by itself. Maybe our next class we'll do. I think we have one scheduled for next week. I think maybe we'll do something just for that particular class, so that I can describe it a bit more. But that's basically what that is. And with the pull compensation, you know, normally you have your settings basically, but if you're using your auto fabric assistant, you should be fine. Okay. All right. So now, as I go through this, and I'm looking at this on the screen here again. So right now, if I go in, now I'm going to show you something here also on each of these. I've got, whenever you see an item like this, I'm going to take off the vectors. I'm going to take off the stitches. Now, whenever you see an item like this here, first we have our running stitch going to the leg. Okay. And we have a circle here. This is a trim. And I want you to recognize that whenever you see a triangle and a circle and you're dealing with the same color, that's going to be a trim. Now let's talk about why that's a trim. Here, with the reshape tool here, look at where the starting point is and look at where the exit point is. This is a starting point for this object. This is a green light. This is where the stitching starts. Okay, this is the exit point here. Your crosshair is where the stitching stops. So because the stitching started and stopped in the wrong place here, that's going to give us a trim. So watch what happens when I move the starting point in the right location. You see how the triangle disappeared. And I'm going to move also the exit point or the stop sign in the correct location. So now that triangle is gone, alleviating that trim with this particular object here. Okay, and just wanted to show you that, to show you what's going on with that particular object. And of course, it did the same thing here. So we'll have to go in here and just move those two objects, the starting point, because it's a duplicate of this particular leg here, and exit point there. Okay, so that's done. So now, so those are finished. I'm going to turn on the vectors here as we go back on again, and we're going to continue here. Now, again, so what's going to be next with this? We've done the legs, and what's going to be next on here? We talked about that. The legs were on the bottom, and also the antenna here also on the bottom. So at this point here, we can do a color change. And as somebody said, the body. We could do the body here also. But we're going to go in. Let's say that my thought process here, I want to do all the brown first, and then I want to go in. I want to do all the green. Okay, and then I want to do all of the little lines here that are going to be on the top of the back of the bug here, and then the gold point around the bug here. So that's what I'm thinking here. So right now, I want to do the we can do the body, and then do the antenna. I mean, that's fine as long as the antenna are going to go underneath the eyes here also. So let's do that then. As we go here, I'm going to change. I'll change colors later. Let's use this one. And I'm going to use also the I can use the complex fill. Now for the complex fill with this one, as I select it, the complex fill is for larger fill areas, like wider fill areas. And I'm talking about fill areas that are wider than normal satin stitches. Now, the difference between the satin stitch and the complex fill is this actually. The satin stitch generates approximately 50 to 120 stitches per square centimeter. That's your satin stitch. Okay. The running stitch here is going to generate approximately 15 to 30 stitches per square centimeter. The complex fill is going to generate 200 stitches per square centimeter. Okay, so the different stitch types that you have available, basically, they're going to generate different types of different quantity of stitches actually. So for this one, as we're going to use the complex fill, and we'll also select it here as well. I'll start here, and all I'm going to do is notice how I go in the middle of the gold here, because I don't want there to be a gap on this as well. So as I go through here, I can stop here, there, and now I'm going to continue down the center here of the gold, because again, I want that gold to cover it up exactly. Here, I'll stop here, and right-click here, and press Enter. Once I complete the shape, it's going to ask me for boundary 2, which we're not going to put a hole in it. Okay, so I'll press Enter again, and it wants the angle point. So I'm going to do an angle like this, and it's going to fill that area in like that. Okay, so we got the angle filled in, and we have the exit point. If I press my reshape tool, it's going to be, I'm going to put that right here. And so we're going to stop here, and next we're going to go in and do our running stitch again, because we need to run to where we're going to go next. And I'm going to run here to the inside of the green, and I'm going to go in also. Now for this one, I can use a satin stitch here, or I can use a tatami stitch here for this one. We use the fusion fill, and as we stitch this, I'll start here, here, there. Again, going underneath the gold part here, there, here. Press enter and enter again. We're going to start here, and I want to exit here, and I want my stitch angle to be like this. Once I press enter, this is what it looks like. Okay. Now, this particular angle here, I did it on purpose actually. I could go in also and I can change that angle, or I can do something like this. If I want to go in and select it here, if I go into my fills, okay, you have the option in your fills to do what we call an auto split. Watch what happens when I choose the auto split. The auto split goes in actually any stitch length that's greater than 7 millimeters. It's gonna draw a line in it, and that's where it's gonna actually do the needle penetration. If I change this to 6 here, like that, if I change it to 5, it will do this. It will double. Okay, so I'm going to go back here. I'm going to undo this to 7, like this. And if I go in, if I select it and I choose the angle, watch what happens when I change the angle. It also adjusts and it makes it look differently when you go in and adjust the angle that way. Again, those are choices that you have when you go in and you're digitizing inside the program. And having said that, go here again. Let me start the running stitch here from where I exited here. Now this time I want to go in and do my antenna. Okay, and for me it's easier to use the input B to do it, because all I've got to do is go in and do one side of it, like this here, press enter, and then do the other side like this. Okay, you can always go back and you can make modifications and edit things. So press enter, see that one's done. Okay, press my space bar, use my running stitch here, and I'm going to do the same thing like this. Just go in, press enter, have my start point here on the bottom, like this, just like this. Use my running stitch again here, go underneath. Now I can copy and paste, but here it's faster for me just to go in, because it's such a small area. Just go in and do the stitching here just like this. But that will be up to you as far as how you want to complete that. Okay, here, last one. And again, I could copy that, I could duplicate it. But here, because it's just an easy shape, and I'm just going to go in and just do it real quick here, there, and from the bottom, just like this. And I'm using my right mouse button here to do curved lines here. It's making it easier, and plus it allows me to use less node points to go and create that with. Now the eyes themselves basically here. Now this is totally up to you or how you want to do this. You can do this as one, or you can do them as 2 compound eyes. Okay, that's totally up to you as far as how you want to do it. If I were going to choose to do 2, I could start here, just like this. Go underneath here. Like this. And starting point, exit point, stitch angle. Like this. Okay. And I can start the next one. Now, because I want to see the outline so that I don't make a mistake here, I'm going to press S to hide the stitches first, and I'll go and I'll do it this way, just like this. Starting point, exit point, stitch angle. Press enter. And you see this, and I'm very glad that happened here, because with these basically what that means is, you ever going in and you've seen something, you're stitching something out, and you see that line that's going to be on the finished product, and you're looking at that and you're wondering, what is that? What that's going to be is, that's where the exit point is for this particular object here. You see the red crosshair? You see where that is? That's what's creating that line that you see on the fabric after things are stitched out that you look at and it makes you so angry. So all I'm going to do is going to move this to the end like this, and that line goes away just like that. Okay, so that's what you're seeing when that happens actually. And so that's what we're just moving that to the end, and we're moving this also to the end here also. Okay, and again, we go in, we want to make sure that this is overlapped so that there's not anything showing underneath like that as I press 0. Okay, so here we have our little bug here, the green basically on this. And do I have any questions? I do have one. What the input A is? What is the input A used for? Can I do the legs? And Oski is asking about the input A tool inside the software. And I'm glad you asked that, because that is the personal, or has been for years, the personal tool of my choice from digitizing from the old school. Okay, and I'll show you what input A is. Input A is located right here, and input A is a tool basically. Look at it here. If I select it here, now the way that the input A is done, and I just wanted to show this real quick. The input A tool is done this way actually. It's done by creating points and counterpoints, which means that if I have a point on this side, I have to have a point on the other side. And this is how it works. And for years, I mean, input A, if I'm digitizing something and it's so imperative that I get the angle points perfect, small letters, sometimes with those, I will use input A. So it is the, or has been actually the tool of my choice, but it's an old school tool. This is what it looks like here. Like this is what you do with input A. And as you can see, because you saw me putting in, so the angle points are actually being put in right away on input A. And that's what makes them so effective, because the angle points are put in right away. Here, points and counterpoints, still here. So every time you see me do a point here, you'll see me doing a point also on the other side, just like this. So when I'm digitizing small lettering, which is one of my favorites and which is one of my passions, doing small lettering, because sometimes when you're using fonts inside the program, they may work, of course they'll stitch out and all that stuff, but sometimes you don't quite get the quality, because sometimes with those little tiny stitches, especially with the fonts, they have to be done manually, depending on how small they are. And so watch what happens when I click on my reshape tool with this. This is what reshape looks like with the input A tool. Okay, you have, because you're automatically putting in your angle points as you're digitizing, and so it gives you more control in that particular sense, basically. So this is, especially a lot of the old school digitizers, that's what we basically grew up with actually inside the program from the past and stuff. So it's a really good tool to use. And another question, Renee has a question also. Could I explain why the input B, you go from the top of the leg to the bottom of the leg, and then goes to the bottom on the other sides? Why not go all the way around? Good question. Okay, with the input B, let me show you. With the input B, this is what happens. If because the way that it's designed, it's basically designed in order to make it faster and easier to digitize from. So watch this. If I choose the input B, and this time I'm going to go all the way around it. And this particular pattern here basically is created for you to do one side first and then the other side first, second actually. So watch this when I go in. And this time with the input B, I'm going to go all around. And you'll notice also, guys, as you're digitizing, you will eventually, if you have not yet, have your own go-to tool here. And watch what happens. Because now the software actually thinks this is all side A. I'm going to press enter. On the left side of my screen now, it's asking me to enter points for side 2. Okay, but I don't have a side 2 because I went all the way around it at once. So I'm going to press enter. And as I keep pressing enter, now the system, it won't do anything. Why? Because because right now I only have a side 1. With input B, you have to have a side 2 in order for it to work properly. So like the fusion fill, with the fusion fill, I can go all the way around it. But that's how the fusion fill works actually. It's designed so that it works like a complex fill, that you can actually go around the entire outline of the object in order to create the stitch pattern for it. But here is a totally different situation with the input B, so it won't do it. So at this point now, as I'm pressing enter for 15 times and it's not doing anything, all I can do at this point here is either delete it or go backspace key like this. Okay, finish side A, press enter again, and then do side B like this right here, because this is the way it was designed. Some of these patterns here, they're created for different reasons, and some of them you may say like, why in the world would they create something like that for? But sometimes they have their own different special things that they do that that you may end up using like 2 or 3 of them that you use all the time because you're moving fast with them and things like that. So yeah, so that's the reason why you can only do side 1 and side 2 with the input B. Now I have another question here also. My pleasure, Rhonda. Sherry wanted me to show the stop and start stitch again. I'm going to select that here. I'm going to press S to hide the stitching. Okay. Now I'm going to press H because in order for you to actually see the start and end points, you have to be in reshape mode. Okay. Here's reshape mode here. Okay. Or if you click an object and press H as in Harry, it'll also take you directly into the reshape mode. Now, the starting point is always going to be the green triangle. Imagine that a green light, okay, at an intersection. Okay, that's where the stitching is going to start. The red crosshair is the red light. That's where the stitching stops. Okay, and so you can move these around, and it will make a difference. I'm going to press S to show the stitches again. If I stop in the middle of a fill like this, this new thing that you see here, this is a lock stitch. Okay. Again, I think next week we're going to go in and do some the effects, and I'll show you what these lock stitches things are. The lock stitches are imperative. The lock stitches when the machine starts, you'll notice on the machine it'll start with 2 or 3 small little stitches. It'll go choo, 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 and then the machine will speed up. Okay, those are lock stitches. Okay, they have to lock. They have to go in and lock on the fabric, or they will unravel. And I don't know if any of you have ever had a 45,000 stitch design jacket bag unravel on you before. I can tell you the exact date. It was 1988. Okay, it was at 4:30 and it was at 4:30 in the afternoon. I can tell you the exact date because it was that serious. And I had something unravel on me. And once it starts, I mean, it's hard to stop. So this is the exit. This is the lock stitch here for the end. So because that stitch has to lock into the fabric, and that's imperative. Okay. Sherry's asking me, have I changed tools? I did change tools. Sherry, I changed tools on that last one because what I did, I went back and I used input A. Oscar he had a question about using input A, and I did change I did change it to use the input A stitch to show him what that looks like, and on the screen actually. And again, I love doing small lettering. Kind of like I've done small lettering for years, because sometimes you have to go in and digitize those manually, depending on how small they are. Okay, and so usually if I have to do that, I will go in lots of times and use the input A stitch to get that perfection with those small stitches. Okay. Now the second time, not sure what. No, the second time, what I did actually. Oh, sorry, Sherry. That was the what I tried to do, and the question was, why couldn't I go around the entire object using input B? And so what I did basically was I went in and digitized the object with input B all around the outside of it, and it would not let me complete it because using input B, you have to have two sides. So if I go in and choose input B and I digitize something like this, I have to press enter, and I have to do now a side B in order for this to take effect, or it won't work, like this one. Okay, now if I try that again, like this, and I try to go all the way around it, like I did like this is where the problem lies. When I press enter this time, it wouldn't do anything, because with input B, you have to have a side A, you have to have a side B when you're using input B. Okay. Do I have any more questions? You guys asked some really good questions. Okay, awesome. Now, let's get back to our little bug here. Now, so right now, as we're about to wrap this up, um, right now, I've gone in, I've done I've done the legs, I've done the antenna, I've done the compound eyes, and the shoulder area here. But so what's next on the list here is me to have to go in and now do these bars on top here. Now, these bars on top and what they represent basically, I have to decide how I'm going to go in and do these. Okay, so right now, looking at them, as I go in, I've got the gold here on top. So what I'm going to have to do this time is I'm going to have to go in and digitize these bars here without the stitch showing through. That means I have to digitize these first, make my running stitch, okay, or my bridge underneath this here actually, so that it's hidden when the gold stitches go on top of it. So I'll start here, I'll go in, I use color number 15, and I will use satin stitches here, and because of their simplicity, I'm going to use input B because they're just a lot more simpler to do that with. So here, I'll start on this side. Start here. Again, very simple shapes. Press enter, and then do the next one here like this. Very simple shapes. There. I'm going to press my S key so you can see what it looks like. Okay. I'm going to press my space bar, use my running stitch. I'm going to run here and stop. Press enter. I'm going to press my space bar now to go back to my input. 1, 2, 3. Enter. Other side. 1, 2, and 3. Just like this. Enter. I'm going to show you what they look like. Okay. This is what they look like. I'm going to press S. I'm going to press my space bar so it goes back to my running stitch. Like this here. Press space bar. It's going to go back to my input B. Stitch here like this. Just like that. All right, here. And at the end like this. This is what it looks like. Okay, press S. Go back to my running stitch here. And again, the running stitch is the bridge that I'm using actually to mend these together so there's not a trim, because like I mentioned before, it takes 6 seconds to do a trim on an embroidery machine. There, space bar here again, and there, and the last one. Okay, making sure that I tuck it underneath that gold satin stitch, because I do not want to see any fabric showing through, or I do not want to see any running stitches showing through once I'm done. So there. So we got the back done here. We have the stripes done. I'm going to press S to hide our stitches. Okay. Keep in mind also that you have to. It's very important. It's imperative that you have to save it. I should have done this first. You have to save your design frequently. Okay. And we'll do bug 17 September 2016. What about that? And save it there. All right. So last but not least, we have our now this gold here can be done. I mean, just like I said before, everybody's different and we think differently, and we may solve these problems differently. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break this up into 3 different parts. I'm going to do this side first, and I'm going to do this side, and I'm going to put the outside here on the shoulders of that side there. So again, I'll choose this color, and I'll start here at the bottom. And again, I'm using put B because again, it's a lot faster. This one here, there, and finish here. Press enter. I go back to the other side, just like this. Okay, just like that. Do my outline here. Again, the circle or the right mouse button allows you to go in and do fewer points. This is what it looks like. Looks just like that. Okay. If I want to turn those stitches a lot more, I can press H and just press my control key down like this, and I can turn it like this. You see how it forces it to be more of a 90-degree angle here, and definitely makes a difference with this. Running stitch here as I go across. Press S. I'm going to hide my stitches again just for you so you can see where I am, what I'm doing here, and stop here. Press enter, and I go back and I'm going to do that again here to the inside. And notice where the line is here, where I did the green. It's far enough to the inside to where I don't have to worry about any overlaps occurring after the stitching is done. Press enter. And again, on the outside. And I'm usually going a lot faster, so I'm slowing myself down here. Here, there, and here. Press enter. I'm going to show you what it looks like. I'm going to press H. I'm going to press my control key because I want to turn the stitches like this. Just like that. Okay. I'm going to save that by clicking the little floppy disk. Last but not least, I'll go in, this time I'll use the fusion fill. Okay. And I'll start this here on the outside like this. I'm going to go around like this. Right click, left click, right click, left click here for the and around the outline like this. Right click, I'm going to press enter, I'm going to close this. So now, remember before when I chose the fusion fill, it asked me for boundary 2. And I told you that we had no boundary 2s because there were no holes inside the fill. Here we have a hole inside the fill. So this time I'm going to start digitizing boundary 2, which is a hole in the fill, like this. Just like this. So you see the different stitch types also, they have their strong points, and you want to be able to use the strong points when you can for those. And I'm going to start my entry point here. I want to exit here also, and I'm going to use my guidelines here for the stitch angles, because I definitely want to control those like this, and I'm going to press enter. This is what it looks like. Okay, and this is what our bug looks like. Okay, and if I wanted to go in at this particular point here and make some adjustments with this as far as the colors go, I can navigate here to compact color palette. That's going to compact my colors to just the ones that I have on the screen here. And I could select, see, the brown. So what we want to change basically is the color of the, I'm going to click here, go into my thread chart. See, I'm going to choose the thread charts for a deer polyneon for here. And for this color here, we want green here, and for this one we want gold. Let's see, and I'm just going in real quickly and just changing the colors here. Oops, gold, and the white here was actually tan. For here, okay, all right. So now, so here we have our bug. Okay, do I have any questions? Any questions? Ah, come on, I know you got some good ones for me. Sure, sure. Yep. Mm-hmm. And so here, so no, so as I'm looking back now, I'm trying to, like with this one, with the leg here basically, I just need to move this closer so that it's on the inside like this, closer. Okay, now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go in, I'm going to do a slow redraw, because the slow redraw, I cannot tell you how crucial the slow redraw feature is inside the program, because the slow redraw feature allows you to do a slow redraw of what the actual machine is going to do, how the machine is actually going to stitch it out. And let's do that. I'm over here. I'm going to do a slow redraw. And as it goes back and it tracks back actually to see what was, it shows us exactly how the machine is going to stitch this out, so that when we go in, we're looking at this and we know exactly what machine is going to do, so that there's no surprises. Okay, and as you can see, how it runs through the brown there, and how it goes in and stitches everything else. It just shows you exactly what the machine is going to do. And so once you get there, your expectation of what your machine is going to do, you know what your machine should do. So if there's anything else that happens that's not in line with what you digitized, actually, you'll know that right away. Let's do this too. Let me take this off. Let me take off the, yeah, take off the background. shows you the underlays, how it runs underneath like this. And so again, this is great feedback. Yes, I could definitely do that, Ron. I can just stitch this out and show the results of. I'll show you the results of this next week. And let me say also, speaking of stitch outs, whenever you go in, whenever you do a sew out of the product, uh, it's imperative that when you do that sew out, that you sew it out on a sample that is the same exact type fabric that you're using in production or something close to it. Okay, because lots of times, what I've seen over the years, I see digitizers, they'll digitize logo designs and they'll send their customers the logo design stitched out on backing. Um, you can spit on backing and it will look wonderful. If you spat on backing, it will look delicious. If you're stitching out a garment, you want to make sure that because you want no surprises in production. And the only way that you can get no super surprises in production is that you have to, if you know that that sample is going to stitch on a terry towel, you need to run a sample on a terry towel. You don't run a sample on backing. Everything looks good on backing. Everything. Okay. So if you're using a digitizer that's sending you samples on backing and say, hey, this looks great, that means absolutely nothing to your embroidery machine once you go in production. It means nothing. It has to be sewn on the same or like fabric that you're going to use in production, and that way you're not going to get any surprises with that, and that's imperative. You have to stitch it on the same, again, or a like fabric that you're going to run in production. That's what your stitch out should look like. Your sample stitch out should look like all the time. Okay, and I can't express that uh, any uh, any clear as far as that stuff, because I get that a lot sometimes. I have a question also. Is the density okay um, when the stripes are on the green on the fill layer? Great question. Are you an old schooler? You sure asking a question like an old schooler. Let's do this. So his question was the underlays here, because in embroidery, when you have a fill stitch background, um, on the fill stitch background, basically, the fill stitch itself will act as an underlay for any top stitching that goes on top of it. Okay, so for the top stitching that goes on top here like this, if you have a stitch underneath underneath this fill, I'm only going to need a center run stitch here. Okay, because you don't have to pack on any stitches on top of the fill. That would be overkill. Okay, so the background will indeed act as a underlay stitch for the top stitching. Okay, so in some instances, basically, the density can be adjusted slightly, or just less underlay stitches, or sometimes no underlay stitches, depending on what you're doing, actually. But so they will act as an underlay. So that does work. Great question. Resizing. Now, resizing. What in particular about resizing, Sherry? You know what? Yes, it would. Watch this, Sherry. Watch this. Let me show you this. Sherry's question is on the resizing. Will the stitching adjust? Watch this. This design here is, let me select it here. This design is, let me go back to, I'll go back to USA for you. And this is like 3.2 inches by 3.61 inches. Watch what happens on the lower left corner here. We have a stitch count of 7,393 stitches. Okay, so again, on the lower left corner here, we have a stitch count of 7,393 stitches. And guys, I gotta tell you, I mean, I'm not saying these things because I love Wilcom so much. I'm saying these things because of the results that I've gotten over the years. Watch this. Now I'm going to take this, I'm going to make this, let's make this 10 inches tall. Bam, 10 inches tall. Now look at the stitch count, 38,747 stitches. It does it automatically. Now the only thing that we have to prepare for here, at such a large change, we went from 3.6 inches to like 10 inches tall. That's a humongous change. Now the thing that happens if there's a large change like that, what happens is then we may have to go in and adjust the stitch types that we've used here. You see what happens here? Now this is 10 inches, this is 10 inches tall. So look what happens here. Do you know what that is, guys? Those, whenever you have a gap here, because this is a satin stitch, okay? And remember, initially at that smaller size, the satin stitches range from 50 to 120 stitches per square centimeter. Once you make that really wide, you can't use that satin stitch anymore. Okay, I mean you can't. You'd have to change the stitch type. There's a couple of things that you can do. You can either select that. You can either select it, and you can go in and you could use. You can use auto split to close it, or you would have to change it to a complex fill like this. Okay, because what this is here, God, that line just drives me crazy. Hold on, let me move that exit point. Ah, okay, very good. So now, because what this is, these are jump stitches because it's a satin stitch. So now, because I had to change this from a satin stitch to a tatami stitch, now the stitch generation has moved from 50 to 120 stitches per square centimeter to now 200 stitches per square centimeter because this is used for large fill areas. But this here, let me show you what it looks like without the true view. It looks like this. You see these dotted lines? I mean, first let me show you here's solid lines here. This is your machine moving at a normal speed here. Okay. When you see these dotted lines like this, now your machine is doing something, and you're going to hear a sound. It goes ka-choo, 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 ka-choo. Have any of you heard that sound before? It's doing jump stitches here, long jump stitches, which is going to slow down your production. So if the change is too dramatic, you will have to go in and adjust the stitch types for those actually. Like for this one also, I would have to change this to a tatami stitch at this point, which again is gonna jack the stitch count up also because of the type of stitch being used for that. And you're right, for good question, Sherry. Because I'm stitching on caps, this I haven't heard of anybody ever stitching out a 10-inch design on a cap before. that might not work. But just smaller, like if I go in and I can change the size like this also. I can, with it selected, I can press my shift key and hold it down, and I can change it. Oops, with the shift key held down, I can change the size of it like this also. And you see the width changing on the screen there with the dimensions? It's showing us how big it is also. So you can definitely go in and make that adjustment here, like that. Or you can do this. You can, with it selected on the screen, at the bottom of your screen here, where it says percentage here, you can also, as long as this little key here, this little lock here is checked, this is the proportion scale lock here. If I make this 120%, press enter, it does them both at the same time. And it changes the stitch count here also at the same time. Just beautiful. Okay, so that's what we have. Let's see that one. Do I have any more questions? Yeah, and the height for that, the maximum height for that anyway would be 2 inches. Just like it was actually. Yeah. So it would actually be smaller because of that size. This is the background here actually. So any more questions? Absolutely fun stuff. Okay. Any questions? I have a question from Marie. Can I adjust the design and have it made in another software? Or should I draw it again from scratch? Now, if you're using another software, unless it's Wilcom software, you're not going to be able to use because each software company has its own proprietary software that they use, and they have their proprietary file extension also that they use. And this one's a .emb file. So um, if it's not a Wilcom software, you won't be able to do this with actually. The only thing that you could do with it is bring it into as a stitch file. This this EMB file here that we have on the screen, this wireframe that we use actually is the EMB file, and because it is a wireframe, we can adjust and pull it and stretch it and make it large with the stitch count, adjusting to whatever the size is to whatever the new size is going to be. So only as a stitch file, unless you're using Wilcom software, could you actually bring it into that software and do the proper adjustments. And you wouldn't want to do that too, because sometimes if you have just the stitch file, just the stitch file would actually limit you as far as being able to resize the design. If you have Wilcom digitizers, ask them for the EMB file. Okay, because the EMB file, that is Wilcom's proprietary file. That is the master copy file that you want to keep and save, the EMB file. So if you use a digitizer that has Wilcom, ask them for it. Okay, and that'll give you the option to be able to go in, and everybody is different in their procedures as far as the company goes, things like that. But that will give you the EMB file actually, that you can actually go in and change the size of those with it. Um, Good question, Debbie. Now, the Wilcom software, um, her question is, okay, Debbie's question is, um, does the Wilcom software software convert the DST? Now, it's different though with that actually. And Marie, get back to you also. I'll give you in 1 second actually. This it's different with the stitch file, Debbie. It's not because the stitch file is um, it's not the master copy. Okay, first the master copy is created, and the DST file is like a secondary. It's like any other machine format like DST. That's like a secondary extension that you're saving to. So it's not the same. Okay, it's not the same as the EMB file. Correct, because think of it this way, Debbie. The stitch files that you send to your machines, they're just pure stitch files. Okay, they're pure stitch files that you send to your machines. They could not read an EMB file. The EMB file is too complex for your sewing machine to actually even read in the first place. Actually, so yeah, you're correct. So the it's not doesn't have all of the outline information and all of that stuff with the file actually. Um, Thank you, Sean. And how do you get a GIF? So, Sarah, so you're mentioning the JF file. You're trying to save it to a GIF format. Is that what you mean? Okay, very simple actually. Here, if I want to save this to a GIF format here, I would just go in to File at this point here, and I would choose Save As. And as you choose Save As, actually, depending on, you'll locate the folder where you want to save it to. You just go down to the bottom here where it says Save as Type. Here's your file name, and you can save to all of these different formats here inside your program. It's really incredible. So the GIF is going to be here. Your Genome format is going to be there. And so you can save to all of these different formats. Even these are some of these older Wilcom formats here. You can save those to also. Barrett, the older ones here. So you can save to every one of these formats, which is really cool. VIP, V3. Um, Janome here, your Pez, Bernina. So you have them all here. Toyo Tajima's here. Your files, you should be able to save those to these particular formats here, which is great. And Debbie has a question also. Sometimes my digitizer sends me the EMB file, but he's using Pulse. He sends you an EMB file, but he's using Pulse to create the E file. Now that Pulse, is that because he shouldn't be able to do that? Because if he's digitizing something in Pulse software, he should not be able to save that to an EMB file. Unless he's digitizing it and unless he has two versions of software that he's sending it to actually. Huh, interesting. Well, maybe he has a because they do have some other versions of the Wilcom. They have the what is it? They have the God, I can't think of the name right now. The lower versions of the Wilcom file, true sizers. So unless maybe he has a true sizer or something like that that he's saving the files to, that he's getting that to you. Yeah, I'm not sure. You might want to ask him. Maybe he has like true size or something like that. Um, because the Pulse should not be writing in Designer version 5. So Digitizer version 5 can save in EMB. See, I'm sorry because I'm not familiar with this version of software. But it should not actually, because usually these software developers they have their own proprietary file extensions that they use, and they guard those with their life. Correct, because if it's not a true EMB file. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, but I would just ask the digitizer because and you could always tell because once you bring that file in, if you can go in and if you can edit that file, see here, there should be a if you go in, if you want to see if you want to see if it's in fact a original EMB file, if you go to your design drop menu, you should be able to go in and choose design properties. And under design properties, basically, it will show you um, the design name. It will show you the version of software that it was created on here, and it will say native design if it's Wilcom. Yeah, you're correct, Richard. So it's actually saved as a machine file, and then saved again as a DST file. And those they're not the same. They're not the same. Yeah, that's my pleasure. Okay. Do I have any more questions? Any more questions for James? Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you so much for your time. When this thing finishes generating, we'll send it out, and you have a copy of it. Um, and let's see. Now, I don't currently have any small fonts to be able to reach out, but I'm working on those. I do have some that I'm working on right now. Um, anyway, guys, thank you so much. Here's my contact information. again. If you need to get in touch with me, I'm at jtworks2010@yahoo.com. If you need to email me, here's my number, 770-895-6690 is my number here. And again, thank you so much for your time today. I had a great time. I hope you did too. And I will see you. I think we're on again next weekend, guys. That's the first time that we had two weekends in a row, which is awesome. Again, so here's my contact information if you need to get in touch with me. And I do thank you so much for your time today. I really, really appreciate it. You guys enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and happy digitizing, and we will see you next week. Take care. Happy digitizing.